Welcome to Flavour Text, a podcast where we examine the intersection between lore, story, and gameplay in Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm CrabbyTerror8, and I'm joined, as usual, by my perpetually resplendent co-host, Kevling. How are you, Kevling?
These introductions are getting more and more convoluted. It used to be just one random word you would use to describe me. But what was that?
Perpetually resplendent. There we go.
Perpetually resplendent. Yeah, no.
So everyone, we've got a very special guest for this episode of the podcast, this wrap-up episode of The Circle Undone. And indeed, our guest is, I guess you would describe as podcast royalty. Needs no introduction, I don't think, from most of our listeners, actually, probably all of our listeners. It's Frank from the Perpetually Resplendent Drawn to the Flame podcast. Welcome, Frank.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Nice to hear that the podcast is the same as Kevling, both perpetually resplendent. What a tongue twister. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm really excited to see what we talk about and where we end up.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be fairly freewheeling, and really excited to hear your thoughts. I mean, Kevling and I have been riffing on Circle Undone for a while. Is it a year? Must be something like that. So it'd be really fantastic to hear somebody else's thoughts, and of course thoughts from the community as well. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But what sorts of things have you been doing lately, Frank, on Arkham-wise, video game-wise, board game-wise, indeed?
Yeah, the nice thing about podcasts is they're like time capsules, aren't they? And that people can immediately work out where we are in the Arkham release schedule. So I am working my way through the Drowned City solo. I've got 2 multiplayer campaigns on as well, which is good. So yeah, still kind of exploring that. Which makes Circle Undone feel like a distant memory in a way. And then what else have I been doing? I've been playing, it's not a new game, but I've been playing a game called Duskers, in which you control drones in abandoned spaceships. Have you come across this game, Duskers?
No, it sounds fantastic.
So it's like a roguelike, so it might actually fit for Circle Undone as well. It's very hard. You're a single survivor on a spaceship, and you're going spaceship to spaceship across the galaxy, like in FTL, docking, and then you're sending your drones onto these ships, and everything is controlled by the keyboard. So you're telling your drones where to move, what to do. But most of the ships are infested with various different types of infestation.
Wow. And
like any good roguelike or roguelite, you learn more about the game by doing. It's pretty merciless. So you can open a door and immediately get rushed by something, and then you've lost all of your drones and the run is over. What it does that's really interesting, though, is the main story objectives continue run to run. So that doesn't wipe, but all your progress does. So you can be like, right, okay, I need to find this type of ship to follow this storyline, and even if you then don't have the same material you had before, you can be like, right, okay, I'll look at the solar system I'm in now, where do I go, what do I do? So I've been playing that and enjoying that, and I think, in terms of Circle Undone vibes, it's all done through like grainy, like old school digitally graphics. Your drones, their video cameras can break down as well. So you can go to like drone 3 and it's just a blank screen and it says video input failed. And you're like, I don't know, I can't even control the drone. I don't know where it is. So all of that stuff gets very dark, which I'm enjoying. So I've been playing a bunch of that. That was a recommendation from a listener on Drawn to the Flame, and it's been super fun.
What was it called again, Frank? So I can write it down.
Duskers. Duskers. Duskers.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds brilliant. Okay. There we go. I've written that down. Brilliant.
How about you two? What have you been into playing wise?
For me, I've played no Arkham at all since the last podcast. I'm afraid to admit. My time has been utterly consumed with blueprints. So, you can't venture online without people talking about blueprints, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. That game is the it's an incredibly well designed. I understand. I was talking about just before we started on the podcast that I think the guy who made it, it took him 8 years to make. He funded it from his own Magic the Gathering website, and yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. Like, similar to what you were just saying about Duskers, it's a roguelike sort of house architecture game at the highest level, most base level. You've inherited a house which has 45 rooms in it, and your task is to find the mysterious room 46. And as you move around the house, you basically have almost like a deck of cards or the potential rooms you could be walking into, and every doorway you go through you have a choice of 3 rooms, and that's basically it. You've got to find room 46, but how you find room 46, how you unlock it, is multi-layered mysteries to unravel. And then once you've done that, you've probably only scratched 10% of the surface of the game.
Amazing.
One of my things on my to-do list at the moment is to decipher a note that was written in an ancient language that's no longer used. The depth of stuff that's going on in this game is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and just the play on words.
Yeah.
It's amazing because it's blueprints,
Yes.
as in royalty, but
Yes.
it's only when you say it out loud or you talk about it that it sounds so obviously like blueprints,
Yes.
as in architectural designs.
Yes.
And I haven't played the game, but I've seen enough commentary on the game to say that double meaning is maybe even more than a double meaning the more you get into the game and unravel what it means, and the way it's playing with what seems really obvious and then isn't obvious, and where information might be hiding in plain sight and all of that kind of thing. I think it's absolutely fascinating. It's so cool.
Incredible.
It is, and it will, if you do get into it, it will devour your time.
Yes.
So let that be a warning.
And deep lore as well. The blueprints is also, there's this deep story, and so it's just wonderful from that perspective.
Yeah, there's
as
all
well.
sort of political history of the world involved as well, isn't there? And the conflict between nations and things like that. It's
It's fantastic.
Astounding.
Yes.
And what I thought was nice as well, on the latest update on Steam, he put in the patch notes that there is going to be no new content. He wanted it to be a singular game that told the complete story. He's not going to do add-on DLC or anything like that. The only thing he's going to start adding on is the bits of almost like, flavour text. Like when you finish a run, it will give you a sentence that describes your house based on the types of rooms that are in it. So he's going to come up with a whole load more ones of those.
Oh,
and
lovely.
Some little flowery add-ons and things, but nothing structural.
Lovely. Yeah, that sounds
Makes
fantastic.
sense if you've designed a game for 8 years and then it's a success and you're like, okay, in 6 months' time I'll bolt on a new something.
Yeah.
It's like, let it stand as its own thing.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
And then someone will say, here's a huge amount of money, make Blueprints 2, but do it in 2 years instead of 10.
Oh, yeah.
I hope that doesn't happen, but you never know. Yeah.
And then what else have I been up to? If you can see from the brochure behind me, I was at the UK Games Expo on Friday, which was very good. Absolutely heaving it was. Friday's normally the quietest day, but yes, it was absolutely rammed, and it was bigger than before as well. I'm absolutely exhausted. My legs still ache 2 days later, but then again, I am getting old. I met. What God? I'm going to butcher his surname now. AJ Porifino, is it? The designer of Final Girl.
Oh, right.
So I met him. And I met Andrew Navarro as well, the ex Fantasy Flight head, who's now Earthborn Games.
Earthborn Games.
So I had a good chat with him as well, and had a
He's a
demo
good
of
guy,
their
isn't
new
he?
game. He is, yeah. We ended up talking about logistics and the size of packing boxes. For some strange reason.
Yeah, something he's hugely into, yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about how the Earthborn Games box is this big, but they're actually redesigning it so it only takes up half the size, so they're shipping less air and things like that. But yeah, really nice guy. And we had a demo of their new game, Hub World Eidolon, which is like a 2-player, almost like a Netrunner, asymmetric sort of thing, but LCG style, as in it's not collectible. You have all of the cards up front, and you can build your deck and then go head to head. But no, it was really good. I enjoyed that game as well. But the rest of it was just wandering around and buying things I shouldn't really be buying because I haven't got the money, but I did it anyway. What about you, CrabbyTerror8? What have you been up to?
Well, we just finished Bloodborne Arkham Horror this week, so I've been running through that campaign. I'm a huge FromSoft fan, and so when Bloodborne came along, I was super excited. I even have all the miniatures from Bloodborne, the board game, that I brought along to play the card game, the Arkham Horror one. And whoever did it, talk about a labour of love. They clearly love Bloodborne because they have nailed it for Arkham Horror, and it shows how, as a platform for creativity, just how flexible it is that it could incorporate the elements of Bloodborne so well. So I really enjoyed playing it. Complex though, a lot of text. It was very text heavy, and if you're not into Bloodborne, I think it would be quite challenging. But if you're into Bloodborne big time, it's a fantastic campaign. Really well done and really well designed. So really enjoyed that. And starting the Drowned City in a couple of weeks, so I know nothing about that yet. I've got to work out which investigator I'm going to play. I'm going to play one from the Drowned City, a flex investigator, but I'm not sure which one. I've got to make that decision in the next week or so. So I'll have to peruse.
Sounding like George Barnaby there.
Yeah. Is that the Survivor? George Barnaby?
Yeah.
Right. That's the one where you put cards under yourself or something, isn't that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
He's the lawyer.
Yeah.
But all of his stuff is about being on a boat.
Right.
So
Yeah.
and the stuff underneath him is in his hold. Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was a bit Silas Marsh about him.
Yeah. He's very nautical. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
And he's very flexy and very, very fun.
Great.
So that would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. I will take that on board. Yeah. And the other thing I did, which has been a delight, I've never done this before, was I've started Carcosa with 3 other people who are very new to Arkham Horror, the card game. And so I mean, usually fronting up and people are a bit, not jaded, but, everybody's kind of going through the motions. And it's wonderful to see the excitement on people's faces and joy and delight, just playing curtain call amongst people who haven't played the game before, and just how much they enjoy engaging with the story. And this is really fantastic experience, and really kind of, reinvigorated my enjoyment for the game again. So I'm really enjoying that as well. So be doing more of that. So there you go.
That's great.
Yeah, really fantastic. I've been playing Blueprints as well, but we've talked about that. So not quite as far as Kevling, but I'm getting there. So in this final episode, we're really going to reflect on the campaign as a whole from that lore story and gameplay kind of perspective. Lots of community responses. And I know we're going to talk about some first impressions, but I thought I would just set the scene a little bit, because I think the responses we've been getting are probably the most polarized I've seen, because we've done the sort of wrap-ups of the other campaigns. And these are just 2 examples of sort of the, without getting too much into the details, but here's 2 examples of what I mean. And this sort of will help, I think, set the scene. So Kirko 2002 writes, "It's always a very close second to Carcosa for me." That's the Circle Undone. "There's a lot of variety in the scenarios, and I find the story between the feuding lodge and the Witch's Coven to be one of the strongest narratives in the game." So loves the Circle Undone. Always Eights says, "It's my least favourite campaign, and it's not especially close. The only thing it does completely right, in my opinion, is remain entirely within the town of Arkham, and I wish we had a few more campaigns that did that. Otherwise, narratively, mechanically, experientially, I find it a big mess." So we have talk about completely kind of polarized responses in terms of how generally people feel about this campaign. So it'd be really
We had
interesting.
similar responses for Forgotten Age as well, though, didn't we? People seem to either love or hate that as well.
Yeah, I suppose
So,
that
yeah.
there was some of that. I think with Forgotten Age, I think the difference is the more you play Forgotten Age, I think, and maybe Circle Undone's a bit like that, but the more people play Forgotten Age, the more they seem to appreciate, even though it's challenging. But the polarization here is quite stark, you know. Doesn't seem to be a lot of people in the middle going, it's all right. It's either I love it or I hate it, you know, kind of extremes for this one. So interesting. So maybe the best place to kick off is, do you remember what it was like when you first played the Circle Undone, Frank? What that was like the first time you sort of had a go at it?
Yeah, I mean, back in the mists of time now, right? Because I played it as it came out, because I've been playing Arkham from release day. So this ties very neatly into what you just mentioned, Kevling, about TFA also being polarizing, because I think what's fascinating about doing a look back like this is how the game is received as it comes out can then mature, change. One of the things that's amazing about Forgotten Age is I feel like Forgotten Age was more negatively received as it came out than TCU was.
Yes.
But then as like TFA has had the biggest turnaround in attitude, I would say, and become really well loved for the people who really get the game and really want that challenge.
Yep.
And Circle Undone maybe never quite developed in that way, I would say. It also ties in with FromSoft games. The fascinating thing about this is, like, how many people do you find online who say, tried Bloodborne, bounced off it, will never play again? Like, I don't think you see that many comments. You see the people who love it or who love Dark Souls. And the people who do the, like, I tried it once, I hated it, I bounced off. Anyway, I've gone off on one. So my experience of Circle Undone, when I first played it, I was really into it. We'd slogged through the jungle. I think, like many people, I'd found my first experience of Forgotten Age grueling. Yeah. And for me, playing Circle Undone for the first time, there was this real satisfaction of, we're in Arkham at last, properly.
We've come back home.
Not as a one-off scenario, but like this whole thing is set in Arkham. We're going to explore different bits of Arkham. Yeah. And then also it's kind of dark, spooky, weird. Yeah. It's not Arkham of Midnight Masks, of let's just run around the town and bop cultists. It's like, this is a quite grim place, and everything about it feels grim and dark and uncomfortable. So I was here for that. And I've got more comments which I'll add later on. But yeah, my initial experience was like, I suppose, okay, Forgotten Age was hard in one way, and then Circle Undone is hard in a completely different way. I guess that's what I'm like, wow, the game is getting difficult, would be my view on it.
Yeah.
How about you two?
I can't actually remember how I felt when the first time I played Forgotten
You've deleted the memory from your mind.
I don't remember having a strong feeling either one way or another. I was just keen to play more Arkham Horror at the time, so it was just more content and I was just happy to play it. And like you say, at that time it was the monthly release schedule. You'd do a bit and then you'd go away and you'd come back and you'd do the next episode, and you're sort of just on tenterhooks waiting for the next release sort of thing. But yeah, so I don't know where I was going with that. I don't really, like I say, I don't really have any strong memories about Circle Undone first time around, should I say. I think it was probably more when we revisited it for the podcast and we were looking at it in more depth about how the story worked and fitted together that I actually started to think about it, I guess.
Yeah.
What about you, Crabby?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was playing True Solo in that period, so the Forgotten Age was the first campaign that I was there for the first, like at the beginning, because before that it was sort of mid-campaign, and it was a bruising experience. So I was feeling a bit battered and bruised after that. And when Circle Undone came out, I too was excited about the fact that it wasn't running off to Paris or into the jungles or anything like that. It was in Arkham. And there was a lot of talk about the tarot, about fate and fortune, and also the prologue was different, and I could see that this was really I was excited because it seemed like there was a genuine attempt to start to change the way that the Arkham campaigns were being played. The prologue, people were talking a lot about it. It was a different way of getting into the campaign, really quite radical way of getting into the campaign. And the idea of the tarot cards and the readings, yes, there was that darkness there, but also there was this weirdness around this sort of idea. And somehow I imagined it was going to work, that maybe you were flipping tarot cards throughout and it was going to take you on multiple paths or something it was going to be. But what was really clear was we are not going to get the same trilogy of Dunwich Legacy, Path to Carcosa and Forgotten Age, which for me are the classical period of Arkham Horror, the card game. This was going to start moving it in a more innovative direction in all kinds of ways, and for me, that was really exciting. And so,
well, and this is fascinating in the history. Sorry to jump in.
Go for it.
Is Circle Undone the start of a new trilogy with Dream Eaters and Innsmouth, or does Circle Undone belong as a tetralogy with the three you named? And they're the 4 campaigns that have return to boxes.
Yes. Yeah.
They're the 4 campaigns that were jotted down by Maxine when she was designing the game with Nate French.
Right.
She jotted down thousands of ideas, but she charted out what were going to be the first beats we were going to hit and how do we get contrast in them. And you can see in her design notes. So I think it's a really, we could talk for hours about it, but it's a really interesting one to ponder. Is this the final dark sort of epilogue of that starting point, or is this the jumping off point for something new? And how do we even evaluate it? Do we evaluate it in terms of kind of failed promise that it's meant to be something new, and does it deliver? Or do we say, okay, this is still Maxine playing in the sandbox of Arkham and saying, well, what does a really dark, really fated, uncomfortable campaign look like versus the jungle adventure Indiana Jones style?
Yes, and that's a great insight, because it is in many ways a transitional campaign from that perspective, because it has innovative elements, but it's still got a foot in the classical camp, I suppose, for want of a better word.
And definitely a topic for another day. Maybe I'll do a podcast episode about this, like how Arkham walks the line between providing the players something new and providing the players something they love and is familiar is a real challenge. And you look at something like TSK that says, oh, by the way, no linear campaign, and it got a really mixed reception when it came out. And still some people say it's a failure, and other people say it's revolutionary. The game never needs to be the same. And and so similarly, Forgotten Age, people are like, there's a -5 in the bag, explore, supplies, all of this stuff is not Arkham I know. You have to replay a scenario over and over again. This is appalling. Like, there are things that swing and miss. And then, Circle Undone, I think, does a similar thing. The prologue, how do you get the players to create the story? Do you get them to play other characters? What do you do? It's really curious to me.
I
was just going to say, it's a testament to the underlying design of the game that it can have that much flexibility in the way stories are told. It really is incredible achievement, to be honest, to come up with an underlying structure that can have that much flexibility in the way that the campaigns can play out without changing the underlying mechanics.
I think back to the dark theme, I think the other thing that whilst Forgotten Age, you talk about it, I call it the Dark Souls of Arkham Horror, the card game. The thing I felt with Circle Undone, which I feel a little less now, but still is that feeling of disempowerment and disorientation, not in a this is a really hard and this is the jungle, but a disempowerment in terms of the choices I'm making, and I suppose we might get into this a little bit more, but the choices I'm making, it seems like fate and fortune is pulling me along no matter what I want or what the player wants. And I did remember that being quite a strong theme of it, and something that I can see that quite a few people in their feedback find the most challenging about the Circle Undone is the way that some of this, not particularly in the first half of the campaign, the way the scenarios are kind of stitched together, I think people find a little bit challenging sometimes. So, yeah.
My sort of general feeling on that, and I think this might come up throughout our discussion, is, to put it slightly glibly, feature or bug. And when we're assessing that, like, powerlessness, is that Maxine having really misstepped? Or is that deliberately meant to be part of the experience? Whether or not you enjoy that experience is a separate thing that one can assess. I did not like that I felt powerless, but can we criticize the campaign if it is intentional to feel that way? And again, I can't stop someone else criticizing it if they say it's intentional and I hate it. But for me, it's like, okay, we need to judge the piece of art on its own terms. And if part of its terms are that, and I'll throw in a card now, if I may, which is the Spectral Watcher, which we see even in the prologue.
Yes.
And the Spectral Watcher is, most campaigns have some kind of, certainly in the Deluxe plus Mythos packs format, they would have some kind of bad guy, boss, enemy in the Deluxe box. And, that might be some kind of big health thing. The Ghoul Priest is a good example, some kind of beefy. For Circle Undone, we get the Spectral Watcher, which is just a 3/5/3, but it has this forced effect. When the Spectral Watcher is defeated, instead of discarding it, heal all damage from it, disengage it from all investigators and exhaust it, it does not ready during the upkeep phase this round. So all you get for killing it is a turn off.
Yeah.
And then it's coming for you
Coming
again.
for you again. Yes.
And certainly at the point of the game that this came out, the way you handled enemies was you killed them. And then they were gone. And that was your role as a fighter. And then you're being told, okay, well, can you do 5 damage? Yeah, I can do 5 damage, no problem. Yeah, do that every other turn now for the rest of the game.
Yes.
What? I'm completely powerless. Yeah. Again, feature or bug. Is that a poorly designed card, or is that entirely deliberately designed to make you feel miserable?
It reminds me of, is it the in Resident Evil 2, the Nemesis, I think it is. They introduce this boss character who you can never kill, and just keeps coming at you over and over and over again, and it's horrible. But at the same time, it keeps the tension ratcheted up, because the best you can ever do is sort of delay it for a little bit and get out of the way. So it kind of adds to those survival horror, I guess, elements more than perhaps some of the other campaigns. I hadn't thought about it in survival horror terms before.
And Resident Evil is Maxine's favourite video game series.
Wow, well, there you go.
She's on record as saying she adores all of the Resident Evil games, even the ones that other people pan.
Right.
She's played them all to death.
Even the one where you're in space or something and you're shooting zombies in space.
I don't know. I don't want to.
Resident Evil 8 or something. Wow, that's brilliant. Yeah.
She's a big Resident Evil fan.
Yeah.
So maybe Nemesis, maybe it's a deliberate echo there.
Yeah. Wow. Actually, Carecode 2002 writes about the beginning. I actually love playing Disappearance at the Twilight Estate. Return to gave you a convenient way to skip it, which many do, but I still like going through the forging through the doomed endeavor. Things aren't going to go well, and your scope of gameplay options are limited. You fight the ticking clock, and your actions, while only somewhat influential to the story, do come back in an exciting way towards the end. I've still never actually managed to save anybody. So that's just showing that kind of idea. It's totally doomed endeavor, like they say, but enjoyable to play nonetheless, to get into that kind of, into that kind of feeling of disempowerment, I suppose, in that way. Yeah.
Just those players that you've been playing Carcosa with for the first time, Crabby. TCU has a nice, soft opening in that, rather than you've just slaved over your new deck and you're excited to do well, and then you hit the jungle or curtain call and you're like, oh my goodness, this is hard. Instead, it's like, okay, now just have this little this little character. You don't even have a deck, you just have a hand of cards, and you get an introduction to Haunted, to some of the things that the campaign is going to throw at you, to the cards like Fatal Fools, which are, that is a scary card if you've not encountered it before. As an introduction to new players, I think it's a really cool thing to offer.
Yep.
Yeah. Whether or not you enjoy replaying it is a separate question.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think at the time it came out was probably about the same sort of time that Keyforge was out, the other Fantasy Flight game that was predetermined decks of cards. And I remember thinking that prologue, they're doing a Keyforge here, where they're giving, here are some pre-built investigators, tackle this scenario and see how it pans out. Okay, in reality, it didn't really live up to that. It was, like you say, just a hand of 8 cards, but I quite like that idea of here is an exact predetermined scenario, play it out and see how well you do, almost a bit like in that Mask sort of thing, isn't it? How well can you do before, well, as it says, you reach your inevitable demise. I did quite like that as an introduction. The way it was all completely fixed. Sorry, I'm waffling now, but yes.
But it's like in a horror movie, isn't it? When you get the kind of pan camera, cold open sort of situation where someone's running through the house, like screaming, are they going to get away? And as the audience, you're like, no, they're not going to get away.
Yes.
This is the first scene of the film.
Right.
This is definitely not going to be okay. But the challenge is, do you believe for a moment, actually, I can do this? And I think sometimes I do that as the prologue. I'm doing it. I'm nailing it. Like, I'm going to make... And you're like, there's no way out. You're not going to make it out. All you're going for is how many clues can you get? But you can end up thinking, actually, I can pull this off.
Yes.
Before you're in it.
Yes. I think the other thing, which is very... And again, these are just coming to me now, but survival horror elements, but also this is probably the first campaign where you would get the feeling that other things are going on and you are not the center of the story. So in Dunwich and Carcosa, I mean, even though Carcosa your head's being messed with all the time and Forgotten Age, you still feel like you're the central hero. Whereas this is saying from the very beginning, there are things going on in this epilogue. You're not even part of that. You've got your character ready to go. You've got your investigator ready, not even using it. You're basically watching somebody else's events happening. And then even, we'll get into but the other scenario, first scenario, that disempowerment, again, it's taking or it's undercutting the idea that you are the center of the universe and everything else is sort of revolving around you to kind of meet your needs however they play out. And Circle Undone says, no, you're not. This world is not just all based around you in that way. So.
Yeah, what a great way to illustrate it, to start with other characters that you're like, well, these people are meaningless, they're obviously going to die.
Yeah.
And then the fallacy is you go, but not me, I'm the hero of my story. Like, maybe not. Maybe the message you should get is if they're doomed, I'm doomed too.
Yeah.
I don't matter in any way more significantly than Gabriella and Jerome. Even if I say, but my investigator has a special colour, so does that make me special? Maybe not. Yes.
Yeah. In a way, it's the exact opposite of Carcosa, where everything might just be in your head. It might all just be... It's so kind of egocentric in that horrible things are happening and they may not be happening in the real world. Like, I've just burned down this mansion. Did I do the right thing? I don't know. But it's all about me, one way or the other.
Yeah. They were definitely a cult. Yeah.
Yes. One thing I do recall, Frank, and maybe I'm misremembering listening to your podcast about Circle Undone back in the day, I haven't listened since, was I wonder about that idea, though, of the themes of fortune and fate and tarots. I know you getting very excited when talking about that at the time, before we knew how the whole campain was.
And they were teasing the bits of art, and it was really exciting, and then it just turned out to be the agenda art.
Yeah.
It was really gutting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they did rectify that with the tarot deck in the return box, didn't they? And giving that art its sort of due. But yeah, at the time, I remember that excitement when all those bits of leaked art in the news articles that they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like you say, they were like the size of a postage stamp at the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what was there a question there, Crabby, about kind of how I felt about the tarot? Is that what you were-
and my own feeling was I think my expectations were very high from those, from that art and what it was going to mean for the campaign. And I don't know what you think, but I feel that those expectations, and maybe they were just too high, were not quite achieved within the campaign.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the theme of inevitability and powerlessness comes across really well. But how that actually mechanically links to tarot cards in the original release,
Yes.
it's each agenda has a tarot name.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. And there's some story about tarot readings, but and then of course there are player cards that are tarot cards, but initially they're stat boosts.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it doesn't do very much. Yeah, no, I would agree on that. I feel like, unfortunately, it's, if I had to find an explanation for it, I'd say it's sort of eyes bigger than stomach in terms of Maxine designs a lot and then can't fit it all in the box, and some of it ends up being relegated to the return to.
Yes.
And I've seen a couple of people online say Return to Circle Undone is the one to get because the tarot deck can have an effect on every single campaign you play then, whether or not that's Circle Undone, and they're such an amazing quality of life improvement, and it's a real shame in a way that they didn't make it into the original, because I think that would have been, just imagine if your first experience of Circle Undone, you're flipping over a tarot card, or you're picking which one to have upright, which one to have inverted. That would have in itself forced you to feel like you are Anna Caslow and you're doing a reading. But that, it was a missed opportunity, wasn't it?
I think so. But like you say, there's a lot of moving parts in the Circle Undone. There's a lot of innovation and just a lot going on, and it'd be very difficult for anybody to have all of those balls up in the air all at the same time, just in terms of one campaign. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. What about the lore and the theme? So I'm really fascinated by this because, I mean, I put it out there, I don't think Dreams in the Witch House is considered one of Lovecraft's finest works by any stretch. I think people are a bit lukewarm about it. They like some of the ideas in it, some of them, but others are problematic, or the story itself is not as perhaps as compelling as some of the others. I think, unlike Dunwich Legacy, which really follows Lovecraft's original story, the Dunwich Legacy is just like, we've done the Dunwich Horror, let's leap off and do the Dunwich Legacy. I feel like there's a good connection there, and I think with some of the other campaigns, they're much more grounded and connected to the story. I think the Dreams in the Witch House, I don't think, and I think people don't find it one of his stronger works. The problem is there's some problematic depictions of witches as purely evil, right? So Lovecraft's view is witches are evil and they do evil, nasty things and they must be destroyed, which is problematic because our modern views of witches as the sort of symbols of feminine power and agency, yes, sometimes dark, sometimes benevolent, often complex. And I think the campaign tries to balance that, portraying Keziah Mason as a malevolent force, but presenting the Coven as potentially sympathetic, countering the very male-dominated Silver Twilight Lodge. I didn't realise Silver Twilight Lodge never is not a Lovecraft thing. It's actually a Sandy Peterson thing from Call of Cthulhu. I didn't realise that. So I think that maybe trying to circle the square in using the original story but not using the original story completely
Yeah.
sort of leaves the sort of the story and the lore kind of in this sort of in-between place that you don't get in the Dunwich Legacy or others in quite the same way. It feels that it's more difficult to kind of mesh them together, if you like. Yeah.
Maxine sort of touched on that in the design notes, didn't she? That she
did,
just get the theme of the witches, but without the Lovecraftian representation and how they were depicted in the original stories. Sort of
she's
almost there as
about
sort of
that.
like the theme of this, against the patriarchy as well, sort of thing, like you touched on.
I think, I mean, is Dunwich Legacy the example we should be following here, or is it an outlier? Is it playing it safe? Because Carcosa is not linked to Lovecraft at all.
No.
And it's not really accurately linked to The King in Yellow, because The King in Yellow is such a weird amalgam of material. It's very hard to do anything that links to it.
Yeah.
And similarly, TFA, The Mound, yes, we go underground, but The Mound is set in Oklahoma, and TFA is set in southern Mexico for most of it. And Dream Eaters, Maxine decides to take kind of all of the dream cycle stuff and riff on it. It's like almost a setting more than a story. I'd agree. I'd say Circle Undone probably less than any of those connects. We have one scenario that kind of tries to play with that material, and then it seems as though Maxine has said, actually, in terms of tone, I'm going to look at existential horror, I'm going to look at gothic horror, I'm going to set a vibe, but I'm not really worried about like recreating source material, which again is kind of a strength and a weakness. I went and looked at what she'd written in her kind of design notes at the end, and she opens with, "Well, that got dark. Sorry about that." So she's kind of aware of the tone. And also when she introduces Azathoth as the sort of the antagonist, she writes, "The tone turned to existential horror, asking questions such as, why are we here? What is the point of anything? After all, we're all going to die someday. This turned out to be a natural complement to what was originally a ghost story and fit exceptionally well with Azathoth as the final boss. After all, how does one fight against inevitability itself?" Like, that comment is nothing to do with Dreams in the Witch House, is it?
No.
Dreams in the Witch House is about the way the past impinges on the present, about the way in which science can unlock a kind of way of viewing reality that is beyond what we would normally expect, and how science and magic interact. And by the point you've got Azathoth involved, you're really not... I mean, I know Azathoth is mentioned in that story, but you're really on a different plane of experience, aren't you?
And I don't know whether because of that the witches come across as a little bit underdeveloped in the not in the Return to, but in the original campaign. I know you can side with the witches, you can side with the lodge. It's hard. I don't know what you two think, but it's pretty hard to side with the witches if the first time you play, you feel like the story is sort of encouraging you to side with the lodge a lot of the time.
We touched on it a few times in the previous episodes, didn't they? You tend to the way the campaign's constructed, you end up siding with the witches by default by not siding with the lodge, not because you want to side with the witches. It's not giving you the sort of the background or the information that would make you want to make that decision. It's almost like the absence of siding with the lodge means you have sided with the witches. I mean, I know there's a sort of a little path in the middle as well, but it's and like you say, it is significantly fixed in the Return to, with additional decisions, additional backstory, new characters being introduced, and it really does flesh out that side of the campaign. But in the original release, that was a definite gap.
Yeah. It sort of falls between two stools, doesn't it? Either are we powerless and you just end up almost by mistake siding with someone. Well, you haven't sided with them, so you must be with us. And that would be in itself an interesting position to be forced into, going, hang on, we're with the witches now? Or you say, let's give you a little bit of agency about at least picking a side. And then I agree, the return to does do that, where it says, look, not explicitly, but that gives you more options for finishing scenarios. You can say, we're going to follow that line. We're going to try and do that. I did that in a return to playthrough. It was like, let's do the witch's route.
Yes.
We need someone with high agility.
Yeah.
But
in fairness as well, it also gives an extra... even after that, after you get past that point where you side by the witches by accident almost, then there is also a later point where you can then still change your mind and make that final point of no return. Actually, no, I didn't really want that. I want to go with these guys. Either whichever way around. So at least it does cater for it mechanically, even if the story didn't really back it up.
Would anyone enjoy playing if you just had no choice at all? No. This is the tension, right?
Yeah.
If you want a piece of media that says you're essentially a passive participant, most of us are playing it in wanting to be able to do something, to choose, to make an action, and I think that I can well imagine that leads to people's criticism of it.
Yes,
it's like of Circle Undone, but hang on, but I didn't get to do anything, or the choices I got were kind of minimal and meaningless. So, why bother? Particularly hot on the heels of Forgotten Age, where what supplies you take seems like it matters, even if you then play the campaign and realize it doesn't. And also, even in the gameplay terms, you're you start on a single location. Sometimes you're okay, where are we going to explore? What are the risks? Who's going to explore? It feels very agency heavy, and then Circle Undone is don't investigate here because it's haunted. This monster can't be killed and is chasing you forever. Oh, and the choices you make in terms of who you side with sort of don't matter. Yeah. It's a different vibe, isn't it?
Someone on Reddit said it's like a ghost train. TCU's like a ghost train. In other words, you have no choice. You're sort of on rails and you're sort of watching as this sort of passive
things jump out at you,
and those sorts of things. With the witches, I don't think it helps that you have the scenario in the woods and you're like, oh, there's witches here, and you're already disempowered because you've been stuck there. You just kind of appear. It's almost like you've been beamed in, and then you're kind of struggling. The witches are there and they all seem very nasty, and then they're gone, and then they don't come back, do they, for a little bit? So you kind of... The other thing is they're not there all the time. The Silver Twilight Lodge is much more of a presence throughout the campaign. So witches kind of fade in and then fade back out and back in again. And I think that...
And there's different versions of witches as well, right? Because the next time we see witches is in The Secret Name, and then we're seeing a really evil witch.
Yes.
We're not seeing the kind of... It's just one witch. It's not lots of witches and what's going on. And are we... I'd agree that can throw you if you've fought your way through Witching Hour and been like, witches are bad. Yes. The next time you see them is Keziah Mason. You're like, we called it
really bad,
but you haven't really. It's a different version, but
exactly. And whilst there's some bad dudes at the Twilight Lodge, they're not quite that bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like what's his face, the head of the Twilight Lodge, is like possessed by some being, or you know what I mean, in quite the same way. So it feels like, and this is what I mean about the tension between the original story, where Lovecraft just conceived of witches as horribly evil individuals, and the desire to make them more sympathetic and complex, if you like, in this particular story. It's a real challenge to kind of get that balance right, I think, because yes, Keziah is nasty. I mean, just plain old nasty and horrible. There's no redeeming features about Keziah. There's nothing that says, well, she didn't mean it or anything like that. She's just plain evil. Whereas everybody else is shades of grey, I think. I wouldn't say anybody else you can really say is absolutely pure evil in quite the same way. And that even Azathoth isn't. Azathoth doesn't care, right? Azathoth doesn't care.
It's uncaring. And wholly uninterested in what's going on. We're less than ants to Azathoth. I mean, so maybe as you're saying that, CrabbyTerror8, I'm thinking, is there actually something going on here where as we explore this, we realise, well, the Lodge, they're not they're not particularly good, they're not particularly bad. The witches, they're not particularly good, they're not particularly bad. Everyone is meddling with powers beyond their understanding.
Yep.
The thing that they think that they're trying to get control of literally doesn't care about them. Whether you're handing that power to the lodge, who think they can use the power for good, whether you're handling it to the witches, who think they can seal away that power, it's a lot. It is a lot of kind of grains of sand being blown around on the shore.
Yes.
No one has really got it right, or has a kind of an altruistic motivation, really.
Yeah.
Or what they think is an altruistic motivation is essentially insignificant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I think the other thing that probably lends itself to siding with the lodge is that some of the investigators in this campaign are lodge people, right? So Preston is the one that comes. Is Preston the only one? Maybe Preston.
And Diana.
Ah, Diana.
Diana Stanley.
Yes. So again, sometimes these things are quite subtle, but it is kind of subtly saying, the Silver Twilight Lodge is a sort of a preferable kind of path to walk down, because some of the investigators are kind of aligned with the lodge as well, right? In that way.
Yeah. I guess if you're getting that message from playing Diana Stanley, there's a misreading of Diana Stanley's flavour, right? The Silver Twilight Lodge, great professional organisation to be involved in. Definitely not a cult that I am trying to escape from. Yeah, I'd agree. I like the roleplay element of turning up in the lodge and for the greater good as Preston, and just being like, my dudes, it's great to see you all. Welcome back. Throwing my money around. Rich guy club. Yeah, that's a nice moment.
And I love, I can't remember which, I love the scenario where you're in the lodge. Which one is it, Kevling? There's some dude just sitting there having a drink. Doesn't care that you're actually there. It's just whatever. Dear. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing around the story and the lore that I think is one of my biggest issues is that between some of the scenarios, the link as to why you would go to the next scenario feels very contrived. Not in all of them, particularly not in the last four, but it's the classic, I've read I don't know where I'm going. I read a newspaper article and I just decide to go there. I'm just going to go to the graveyard because I've read some article in the newspaper that happens to catch my eye. That I think is I don't know. I guess fate and fortune kind of plays into that theme, that it just, it's caught your eye and you decide to go, but it did feel a little bit challenging to say that's where I should go next.
We keep citing that example, don't we, about looking in the newspaper and going to the graveyard, but rereading it, that was the one where actually if you'd got killed in one of the earlier scenarios, this was the new investigators coming in and they see the newspaper and go off to the graveyard. But I mean, it is still a bit of a leap, but you have got to get everybody to that point, haven't you? And I guess there's only so much you can do in between in that text between scenarios to explain why you're there.
Given what we've seen about how the game expanded in terms of the text it provides, this is still a point of time when Maxine is relatively restrained about, and it's because it's still Mythos Pax, so she has a limited amount of text. So she does have to fit in somehow of how do I go from you've just had a horrific time fighting a terrifying witch in a ruined house that opens portals to other dimensions to go to a graveyard.
Yeah.
And I would agree, this is the most cited time of like, why are we doing this? Where's our agency? And I'll read like a little bit of the actual setup story for Wages of Sin. As you go through your morning routine, your eyes drift across one of the smaller headlines of today's newspaper. Ghost sightings on Hanlon's Hill. Residents of Uptown claim to have seen human shapes in the thick fog emanating from Hanman's Brook. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Then the realization dawns on you. If it's witches you seek, the only place you can be certain to find them is 6 feet underground. I mean, it's so forced, it's crowbarred in.
Yeah.
I chalk it up to, again, powerlessness, inevitability, the ghost train again, I guess.
Yep.
We're on rails and on we go. That, I guess that's not to excuse it as much as it is to explain it. There seem to be times where you just get shunted along. How is
like
it any
say,
different?
It's sort of like the constraints of the design at the time. You had limited. You had literally a single sheet of paper, maybe two, to explain everything. To get into the next Mythos pack introduction.
Yeah.
So there's only, like you say, there's literally only so much you can do.
And how is it any different from after the Doom of Edsley saying, right, we're going to Arkham now for Threads of Fate? You know, or saying, you know, or even you've just fought your way through Heart of the Elders. Oh, by the way, you've been body swapped and you're a Yidian. Like, I think the whole early campaigns have this problem, which is how do we take you from this scenario to that scenario? And I would say, I think one way you can do it is essentially just keep the story really slim and let the players make up their motivation. Because if you're not going to give people a choice, why try and convince them to agree with something that, you know, and you can find, you know, any, like, I could be role-playing this as, say, Hank Sampson and say, well, I don't read the newspaper in the morning. I'm out doing farm chores.
Yes.
Or I run errands for people. Why would I have read the newspaper? I've got one intellect. Or Daniela, like, you know, you can find a reason to say this isn't me for any situation. So it is curious to me that this one in particular seems to throw people. Because this has happened throughout, right?
Yeah. I wonder if it's because the witches come in and then they disappear and then you're sort of back, you know. And I actually said at the time, Kevling, if it had been something like, and again, it depends whether you're with the Twilight Lodge, you know, the Twilight Lodge had said, oh, there's this something, blah is going on, I want you to go and investigate it on my behalf, kind of thing, you know, that sort of thing. So a quest giver, if you like, kind of thing. Because you're right, that it's not like there aren't other scenarios that sort of have quite contrived kind of linkages, but it's perhaps because you see the witches, you go away and do something else, and then you're back looking for them again. There seems to be this sort of dissonance about, whereas in a lot of other campaigns, the thread is always pretty much there, right? You're on a sort of a clear narrative.
I think
thread.
it's just quite an extreme leap on that one particular example, isn't it? Yeah.
Or maybe it's as well, if we're on the ghost train, it's actually about that moment where you glance the tracks.
Yes.
And then you can't tell yourself, oh, I'm in a haunted house and I'm lost in this. Yes. It's like, oh, I can see that we're just being taken from this section to this section.
Yeah.
Maybe the other thing is a mechanical one. The Wages of Sin is a really hard scenario.
Yep.
So being forced to play it against your will, you know, the other examples I gave, if you go and play Threads of Fate, you have a whale of a time. If you go and play the City of Archives, you might have a miserable time, but you probably have a great time because that's also an amazing, intense thematic experience.
It's a memorable time,
whereas
if nothing else.
A memorable time. Whereas you go and play Wages of Sin, and there are some terrifying ghost spirits that are beating you to pieces, and you run away with your lives, and you go, why did we go to the graveyard? Like, this was horrible to me, you know? And I've come to really enjoy that scenario because of the challenge.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of the Dark Souls part of it again. It's a challenge and you want to be really prepared for it. It's not I want to immerse myself in a thematic experience. It's like, no, I'm just going to grit my teeth and try and get through this.
Yeah.
I think what I'm revealing in this episode is that I'm a masochist. I think this is the theme that is coming up, that I seem to be a glutton for punishment for things that are hard and difficult and challenging. Yeah.
Well, having platinumed all of Dark Souls, Bloodborne, the whole lot myself, I must be one too. Because
virtual high five, virtual high five. Yeah.
Plus, there's that feeling of moral superiority when you've done it, because you can brag about it afterwards as well. I suppose
Right, exactly.
there is that. But we got some feedback on Reddit, and I have to say this is where I think we got some of the most vociferous feedback. So I'm sorry. People are just saying the way they feel about these things.
Of course, yeah.
Ender Dragon says it starts off with the witches in the lodge, and I enjoy the scenarios in the mansion, lodge, and even the woods, but then it randomly hits with the geists that have to be taken to a specific location. I mean, they are at a specific location, then breaches, and the story seems to just fall apart there and go off on a completely random direction. So this is a theme, that people say. The causality of events doesn't make sense. This is always 8 saying the investigator's actions are not motivated, and the story text does less than nothing to explain why you're doing each thing in order. The items you collect are arbitrary and have no connection to the actions you took. The choices seem like they're consequential, but they change nothing about the direction the story takes narratively or mechanically. And Bloody Bottom writes, I've played the campaign multiple times and done every story route, and it feels completely disconnected from any kind of logic or drama. Stuff just keeps occurring. So you can see there's for people, like I said, this polarization, this seems to be the thing that they're really dialing into, is this lack of agency and feeling that for what seems to be sort of that they don't feel like there's a logic through it, which there is. But I think it's maybe that there's just so many things going on in the witches, and then they're gone, and then they're back, and I think it's really the first half of the campaign that's like that. I think the second half of the campaign is very much connected and very much logically flows from one to the next. So I think it's only the first half that you could say, if you were going to make that criticism, it's in the first half rather than the second half.
It's a hard one to judge, isn't it? I think it's a fair criticism. Again, we take the concept of things being inevitable. Is it a failure then in kind of creative execution that Maxine needs to do a bit more sleight of hand to make us feel that we have a path and a choice when actually we don't? Or does she essentially decide to show us, look, you don't have a choice? And these things happen, and they happen seemingly at random. Again, who's the antagonist? It's the blind idiot god who cares literally nothing for human concerns. And the point of Azathoth is that everything will end at some point meaninglessly. And all we will have been is kind of the echo of a dream in Azathoth's mind at some point, the entirety of human existence. So if you put it in that context, you can kind of do whatever you like in Circle Undone, and it all means nothing. But where the tension for that is that as a player, you want to feel like you do something right.
Exactly.
You want to feel like I bring my deck, I make meaningful choices. And what a disempowering experience it is to say, well, actually none of this matters. And I guess that's I think one of the reasons why Forgotten Age is now so loved is that it's hard, but it feels like you can master it, which is the Dark Souls things again. Whereas Circle Undone, I'd say the difficulty is lower sort of mechanically, but you never get to the point of feeling like, it doesn't matter if you smash the secret name, you're still playing Wages of Sin and going looking for geists. It doesn't matter if you do really well meeting the witches in Witching Hour. You're still then going to go to Joseph Meiger's estate and tangle with all of the stuff that happens there. I can see that as a frustration for sure.
And it is this tension, right, between agency and lack of agency. And neither is good. If people have complete agency, then it's no fun. And if they have no agency, it's no fun. So it's a difficult line to tread.
One of the things I jotted down actually on this, I'll just throw this in because this is in your notes as well, about how does this fit with the Arkham Files?
Yes.
And obviously the Arkham Files isn't Lovecraft. The Arkham Files is FFG's own IP, and it is inspired by Lovecraft and his milieu. but it also has this kind of pulpier side, this action side. It adds a little bit more of what we'd expect around agency.
Yes.
And my first introduction to the Arkham Files was with Eldritch Horror and the board game. And I feel like Eldritch Horror did a better job at really hitting that Lovecraft note of like, you're just an ordinary person, you're not special, and what you're facing is much grander and bigger than you. So you're going to have to be really lucky, essentially, to do anything. So that idea of fighting against the odds, and certainly the way Eldritch Horror works is your character might get defeated midway through the game, and you draw a new character, and that's part of it. Similarly, in some Lovecraftian RPGs, that might be the case as well. Don't get too attached to your character; they go mad, you lose them. Arkham Horror, the card game, doesn't do that as well. It finds it harder to make it feel like you are meaningless. Because you have your deck, you spend time building it, losing your character halfway through, you lose your XP. So it makes playing in that space more difficult. And I think Circle Undone is the best attempt at making you feel pointless. And I think that's probably why it doesn't work as well for Arkham Files. If this was a game in which the starting point, and Maxine tries to communicate that to you with the prologue, she tries to say, look, everyone is meaningless, but it's a tension I don't know if it can be resolved. I just don't know if it can, because you're saying, but I've made my deck and I care about it and I want to win.
Yeah, that's a great insight, Frank, because I hadn't thought about the level of ownership, because I played Eldritch Horror, I played Mansions of Madness, I played them all, but the ownership and investment, I mean, before you even come to the table, you can spend hours crafting your deck and going through it all and everything in a way that you just don't do with other Arkham Files games. So it is inherently telling you matter. You matter as a player because of your investment, but your investigator matters in a way that you're
We used to pick randomly when we played Eldritch Horror. We used to line them all up and roll dice and go, oh, cool, I'm being Charlie Kane this time. Okay, that's going to be amazing. Or who have you got? Oh, no, we've got no fighters. Okay, fine. The attachment between player and character was so divorced. And so different in Arkham.
Yeah, that's so true. And it makes me think of Final Girl, Kevling, because you are the final girl. You are expected to survive to the end and win. So it is much more of a big deal when you don't, because there's the game itself, it's hardwired into the game that's what's expected. You're not disposable like everybody else. Everybody else is disposable except you as the character. And that's so true in Arkham Horror, the card game. It's the same thing. There's this, well, more so because there's huge investment in it. So I guess it shows where if you push that tension too much, it can have quite a backlash from people. Fascinating. I didn't think we'd be talking about that. That's absolutely brilliant.
Sorry, I hope I've not taken us too far off piste.
No, that's why we have these wrap-up episodes, because, get to talk about the things that we, when we're talking about the scenarios, we sort of get into those, but not in a sort of a more macro way, in that way. So that's absolutely brilliant. So gameplay and mechanics. We've talked about the lore and the story and people's initial impressions, the gameplay and the mechanics. Circle Undone, did it introduce a lot of new, bold, different mechanics and ideas?
I mean, I think we said it on the previous episodes as well. It's where extra complexity started to be layered into the scenarios, and it is definitely a step up from the previous campaigns, wasn't it? Where you introduce more things that you need to keep track of and keep balanced in your mind to make sure you're making the right decisions, like the haunted on locations or the curses you might have in front of you and things like that. It's
or how many of the 3 copy cards are in play, because does that then become seriously problematic if there are multiples?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it was definitely more complex than previous. Not, I mean, we talked about difficulty, but it's not necessarily more difficult, but there's more things to think about and keep balanced in your head about helping you make the right decisions because of all these different things that you didn't previously have to take account of.
Yeah.
So it's like adds a sort of a cognitive load to playing the game, I found, from this point on.
Yeah. I think with the hexes in particular sitting in play in front of you,
Yeah.
the cognitive load is not that necessarily they do things that are, are they more complicated than a hidden card in your hand in Carcosa? Maybe not, because they don't restrict you in the way a hidden card would. But there's also the opportunity for misplay, like, oh, I've forgotten to do this thing at the end of my turn, or I've forgotten to do
That's
that.
more what I
And
was
that
getting
is
at,
yeah, and that is a cognitive load that is really draining. Oh, it's the end of my turn. I passed the turn to you, but I should have done X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
I'd agree, and I've had some of the longest scenario playthroughs in multiplayer in Circle Undone, simply because there's sort of multiple things in people's threat areas to keep an eye on, and we're thinking about, oh, hang on, who's going to clear this hex? Can we clear it? Maybe not. Oh, wait, what's it going to do to you? I'd agree. Yeah, in terms of new mechanics, I think Haunted is the only one. And Haunted is very straightforward. It's kind of retaliate, but for investigates.
Yep.
But of course, the way Haunted works, there is an extra wrinkle here. The way retaliate and alert work are you just look at the damage and horror values, and if I miss a fight or I miss an evade, I get that.
Yep.
But Haunted, each Haunted retaliation might be different based on where you are.
Yeah.
Does it matter if I lose a card here? Maybe not. I've got an empty. Oh, okay. Can I afford to lose 2 resources? Oh, wait, I'm taking a. That adds a mental load, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it stacks to really stack up, like you say, and requires requires that sort of level of sort of just checking everything constantly, which then gets in the way of focusing on the story and the narrative and all the other things that are going on. So, but it certainly adds to the idea of disorientation and fatalism and all those things. It's thematically great, having the hexes and other things. I think they work really, really well.
And you've got spectral locations as well.
Oh, yes.
And locations flipping over.
Yeah.
Which only happens in Death's Doorstep and Wages of Sin.
Yep, that's right.
I think
those
it happens
two.
later on.
Yep.
Yeah. So you've got this, again, in theory, I think quite a neat way of saying, right, well, how do we have 2 versions of the same location? But then as soon as you add player decisions around, do we flip it, do we not, what's on the other side, or is it a forced flip, everything flips over, that in itself I think adds a kind of mental load as well. The contrast with Forgotten Age, where you're playing maps where you're almost entirely in control of building the map out when you're ready.
Yep.
Have we done everything in these 3 locations? Okay, let's explore. And then now you're like, okay, well, hang on, there's 2 versions of this same location, and which am I on? And that's adds to the load as well, for sure.
They used that sort of haunted spectral. Have we seen that or something like it since? Really?
Back in Forgotten Age, there was the sort of time shift of locations, wasn't there? When you were in Mexico and you jump back to and you replace them with a different version of the same.
Yeah, that's right.
Or
that's right.
Back in time, but it's not quite the same thing. But
I think there's a scenario in Scarlet Keys which is very reminiscent of Wages of Sin.
Yeah.
It's Shades of Suffering. It's
Yeah.
the one in Kuala Lumpur.
Right.
That requires you to find unhappy spirits and take them round. But I don't remember it. I don't remember it having different location types.
No. So yeah, it's interesting they haven't really taken that forward. Whereas, for example, and they weren't innovated, but the story, for example, the story things on the backs of cards have been something that were innovated and then have been used a lot since. Some sort of mechanics have been used a lot because they really work well.
Yeah.
There's
my understanding of it is it's like there's a stable of mechanics. And in any given campaign, they try not to just add more.
Yep.
But what do we draw on, pull back? So, like, good example is we're getting flood again in Drowned City. So they haven't created a new flood. They've just said, right, we'll bring flood back.
Yeah.
And in Feast of Hemlock Vale for the player cards, they said, right, we'll bring back Bless and Curse.
Yeah.
They don't add a new thing. It's not another 3 different tokens. It's just, well, what are we drawing from that are going to be like the themes of this campaign? The mechanical themes, I mean.
Yeah.
So I imagine Haunted might come back. I wonder if Haunted should have been printed in the base rules, just to finish out, the punishment for investigating, the punishment for fighting, the punishment for evading. They're a nice trio. But I think it is more complicated than the other two. My feeling mechanically about Circle Undone, the note I've written is that I think this campaign is some of Maxine's best attempts at making the encounter deck feel like your opponent. Because the encounter deck is your opponent. And sometimes it has a really strong character and sometimes it doesn't. And I think there's something about feeling like you're being comboed out in multiple scenarios, often because of the way cards accumulate, that it feels like the encounter deck is really messing with you. And then you've got things like the Witches that also mess with the encounter deck. So it feels like there is a player sometimes battling you, and that it's not just individual, here's your card that you deal with this turn, it's done now. It feels more like there's a kind of force at work. I'm thinking particularly of something like Secret Name, where it's just accumulating, all of the rats are getting bigger. You're like, Brown Jenkin keeps coming back. Like this player I'm playing against is a very high level player, and they've got a deck that they know how to deal with me. I think I often feel that way. Another example would be In the Clutches of Chaos. Seems really geared, obviously, around breaches. And you're like, okay, this player, the encounter deck, has really turned up to play. They're really here to make this happen, which isn't always the case. And I think Circle Undone has some good examples of that.
Yeah. That's the pandemic style mechanic, right? In the which is quite good. Yeah, you're right. That is true, and it makes me think about in Carcosa with the whispers in your head cards that are very thematically strong. What you talk about it being the encounter deck being an actual a player who is opposing you in a way that feels more visceral than just drawing cards. I guess Forgotten Age is similar in a way, but it's more environmental hazards, right? So the thing you're fighting against are the pits and the traps and the stakes and the other things. But Yes.
I think you can apply it to any scenario and say, if this scenario was a player, how are they trying to beat me?
Yep.
I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary saying that. The difference, I suppose, is in Circle Undone, it feels like there is a force at work to try and get some things to pop off. So it is like playing a combo player, as opposed to just a story is evolving here because every round we draw 1 to 4 cards and those cards do things. It's like, I guess the equivalent in Forgotten Age would be if there were multiple cards that, like, when you drew them, you then put them next to the Explore deck. And then when a certain card was drawn from the Explore deck, all of those other cards would trigger. And actually in Return to Forgotten Age, the new snake baddie that then spawns the other ones, can't remember what it's called, it's a different brood. That is the kind of thing I'm talking about, where it's like, okay, the encounter deck really set something up here for me. And it's really hit me as a result.
The one I love is the Piper. The Pipers, that if you get 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that because there's this sort of, and I think we got the 3. I think we drew 2 of them in one round, and then we got the 3rd one the next time, and there he was. The Piper of Azathoth had arrived. It was like, oh no. So that was very. Well, not nice, but you know what I mean. So,
It's not I was going to say it's not necessarily a new mechanic, but I particularly like how the scenarios that are sort of based in one physical location, and the layout of the map are like the rooms in the house, and it's almost like playing a board game. And I've got is it for the greater good, where you're infiltrating the lodge, or you're going in as a friend of the lodge, and you've got like the two wings of the house, and it's all it's like a logical layout how you would expect it to be, and almost like playing a board game. I need to get this key from over here, I need to get it over there so I can meet up with this guy and do this. And I really like those sorts of scenarios, how it is almost like playing a board game, and everything is more almost physical and logical, rather than okay, I got the woods over here and the swamp over there, and do you know what I mean? I
or
really
just
like
a grid,
that.
or just here's a grid of locations and they're all connected orthogonally. It's like, what's the layout of this house, or what's the layout of the Joseph Miger's estate? Oh, okay, it's got the two wings. This seems familiar from it. You know, like, okay, let's see how this fits.
I like
and like in previous, is it one of the Forgotten Age ones where you've got like the 3 floors of the house, and you're going up and you're going down, and I don't know, it's just something, the way my brain works. I like how sometimes the scenarios have a nice physical location that matches how you would interpret it and how you would be moving around that location. And the idea of using the chaos tokens as keys, as objects for you to pick up and take to certain locations. Again, it's reusing the base components in a new way to do it something slightly different. I really like that.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's fantastic. Yeah, no, that's some of my favourite scenarios like that.
And interesting you mentioned that, Kevling, in this campaign, when there's also dislocation. So in the witching hour, you all start where your location is in your play area, and you're not connected to each other. And that's the reason I'd say that works, is that, we sit down at the table and go, hang on, how is this connected to yours? No, it's not. You're somewhere in the woods that is specific to you, and you have not yet worked out how these locations fit together. And similarly in Union and Disillusion, when you get bumped back into lost bits of woods yourselves and the ghosts come back and everything else, there's a similar, oh no, it's happening again, we've all gone and got lost on the island. And that works if you have an expectation of, I get to look at the map and I know where I am. Like you can only pull, if every scenario you just put one location in front of yourself and everyone did that, you wouldn't feel lost. You just go, that's how we play. So there's a really nice sort of playing with some very grounded scenarios. This is what the house is like, and then some very dislocated scenarios.
Yes, and the final scenario is very dislocated, and you're right, there is this real contrast between them, which again feeds into the idea that you're not the central person. You don't have necessarily a central view of everything in that way. So it does have that contrast in that way. Actually, on your point about the encounter cards, Afraid Screen 7914 said, TCU has some of my favourite encounter cards. The scaling effects and collect 3 treacheries make me dread the encounter deck like no other campaign, even though I don't think it's really that much more difficult. Fate of All Fools, Diabolic Voices, Demonic Piping, Unavoidable Demise. The fact that I remember the names and effects of all these treacheries immediately tells me they must be doing something right. So, exactly to your point, Frank, that some people really appreciate how they build and combo the encounter deck in that way. But likewise, Kiyoko 2002 said, the biggest issue I have with TCU is how fiddly and busy the table gets. By the end of scenarios, you may have multiple hexes and curses in front of you or attached to the agenda, and in some scenarios a ton of aloof enemies just hanging around taking up space. There's haunted locations to keep track of, and the Watcher's obtrusive presence, and just a lot going on, so it can be very easy to miss a prompt trying to keep track of everything. I was hoping some of the return to changes may help, but actually made it worse. And Bloody Bottom says, I like how challenging it is and how it offers really tough stretch goals for groups who are up for it, like trying to defeat all the ghosts in the graveyard. I also find the scenario where you have to repeatedly repel Brown Jenkin delightful. Well, that's a hot take. I hate that little
First
guy.
time ever. Yeah. Yeah.
Brown Jenkin is absolutely delightful.
Oh, I just want to toss the the dynamite into the room with Brian Jenkin and never see him again.
Yeah. I imagine if Brown Jenkin has ruined your day multiple times, there is a kind of sick pleasure in just turning up with a flamethrower to the secret name, ready to absolutely give Brown Jenkin what for. Yeah.
Exactly.
To jump onto the previous comment about the play area getting full, I think that's a fair criticism. I think that's fine. Like, it is, the scenarios do get complicated. Some of that is then familiarity. If you play the game a lot, I've played solo a lot, I find it easier to track some of those things. But, as a new experience, that's really daunting. In exactly the same way as people hated Explore when it came out, because you have to do this thing to build the map and then you get hit by a treachery. Like, why have I just spent an action to be damaged or to make everyone lose resources? It was horrible. People loathed it and they said I have no agency. And of course you do actually have agency in both of those cases, but it's not the kind of familiarity of it. And I guess this is also the challenge of designing a game that threads the needle for players of all levels, abilities, attention spans. Some people are playing in busy pubs after a long day's work, certainly when this came out, like struggling to track this stuff. Other people are playing very slowly, meticulously, have room in their homes to leave it out. Different people get affected in different ways by design decisions.
Yes, you can please all of the people some of the time, some of the people all of the time, and all that. Should we... I know we've been talking about the scenarios a fair bit, but shall we go through them, each one, and talk about them, or what do you think, guys? Do you think we've covered them?
Yeah, can do.
Yeah? Okay. So, Disappearance at the Twilight Estate. I think we talked about this before, but innovative prologue, something a bit different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sets the tone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think lovely promise for... weirdly, actually, from everything we've been talking about, it gives you a sense of agency of, I get to play these other characters and impact the story. And actually, maybe that's, really what it's saying to you is, no, everyone is doomed. But maybe there's a little bit of a misstep in that. But I think, just to sort of reiterate what I said before, I think it's a really nice introduction to the campaign for newer players.
Yep.
You're not worrying about drawing from your deck. You've just got some cards in front of you and you're learning how to play. And you're also going, oh, wow, this is really mean. Haunted is horrible. It sets the tone really nicely.
Yeah. And if you don't want to play it, you can just do the random thing, right? Or if you've got the tarot cards, you can use those, which is awesome. Which is nice way of doing it. I liked it. I mean, I've only played Circle Undone twice, so actually I don't remember it that well anyway, so I'm always happy to play it, because it's not like I've played it 10 times and I'm like, oh, not again, not the prologue again. I don't feel that way. I'm always happy to, always, he says, having played it twice, I'm always happy to play the prologue again. What do you think, Kevling? How do you feel about the prologue?
Yeah, I mean, probably the same, to be honest. And I think we kind of exhausted the topic of the prologue a bit earlier, didn't we? And like you say, I think it's a really good introduction, like Frank says, for new players. The idea of, like we said, playing out the introduction of a horror movie where, what horrible thing is going to happen to these guys? How long can we keep them going before they meet their demise? And like we said, having that sort of predetermined, here is a fixed scenario, play through it and see how you get on. And we know what the outcome's going to be. Let's just see how well you get through it. And then, I suppose it's sort of playing into the themes, isn't it? Of, this is what is going to happen. We've got no control over it.
Yeah. What about the witching hour, Kevling? What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that was the one where we wake up lost in the woods after the tarot reading, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's
And
like
we
Star
were just saying,
Trek-like.
you've got a single location in front of you, and we're trying to work out, trying to find our way back to each other. And it's almost like at the beginning you're playing, if there's four of you, like playing 4 solo games around the table together. But yeah, it was an interesting switch up of the mechanics to play things differently, to really play into that theme of being lost and disconnected from the people that you were expecting to be playing alongside. Yeah, I don't think I've got much more to say on that.
I got very used to being a seeker who didn't have to fight, so I got very outraged playing this because I'm like, hold on, where are my mates? I can't do this alone. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to just make almost exactly that point. I think Witching Hour is a really interestingly designed scenario, and I've seen it provoke really strong reactions from players because they come in with their power team.
Yep.
Fighter, Seeker, you're going to be like your pocket defender.
Yep.
And then that doesn't happen. The Seeker ends up maybe in a high shroud location that they can investigate at, but it's going to take them a couple of turns to get set up ready to start doing it.
Yep.
And the fighter just can't get any clues at all, or can get very few.
Yeah.
And they're twiddling their thumbs.
Yeah.
And it's a really mean situation for people to be in, and it can really throw people, and I think almost put you on the back foot for the campaign pretty much from then on. Like, this is horrible. We're clawing through mud to do things, and yeah, I would chalk it up alongside. Well, I think Curtain Call is one of the hardest opening scenarios because it's so cramped. But I would put Witching Hour up there if you're not ready for it. If you're ready for it,
Yes.
fine. You work out very quickly. Okay, who can get the clues we need quickly? And I think there's two acts you need to get through to reconnect the map.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the fighters are just tooling up in that time. Maybe they've got a kill an enemy, get some clue technique that they do, but otherwise it's like, right, Seeker, we just need you to do this thing. It gets a bit mean if the Seeker draws an enemy.
Yes.
But otherwise you can kind of power through. There are very few enemies in the deck,
Yeah.
so you're also kind of safe there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's not a swingily designed scenario, but it can provoke a range of experiences because of that separation.
Yes, that emotional response, and kind of blaming the witches then. And they're not being very, very predisposed towards the witches, and why are we here, and why the hell are we doing this? And I think the return to kind of helps to clarify all of that a little bit better. But kind of the overwhelming emotions are bewilderment and then of course you just get transported back somewhere again. So it's sort of this, you're in and then you're out, and you're not really sure what's happened and what. Yeah, it does leave people feeling a bit bewildered. I think, but it's certainly different and innovative because I think, as you said, Kevling or Frank, maybe I forget. It's like individual solo play. Around the table kind of deal. So it's great in that way. So, yeah. Yes. Then we get the secret name. Everyone loves the secret name, don't they?
Death's Doorstep.
Oh, sorry, Death's Doorstep.
First.
Sorry. I missed one.
That's all right.
I know why, because this one's also...
We have it under the worst scenarios list. Yeah.
Sorry. Scratch that. Edit that bit out.
What are the issues you see with this scenario? Why is it falling down for you two?
What do you reckon, Kevling? What's your...
I'm not sure.
For me...
Because this is the one where you're back at the Migra
that's
estate,
right,
isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah, it's basically we're playing the prologue, but as ourselves, and we get to see the non-spectral Migra estate first, and then
it switches, and then we've got to try
the
and
mist
escape.
descends.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed it. It's again, I suppose it's my affinity for like a nice house laid out. I can understand logically where it is, and I know when it all switches, I've got to get to that door somehow. Yes.
I think for me it's the disempowerment that suddenly this mist rolls in and you've got this watcher thing that you can't kill, and you've got these locations. So I think for me those are the things that, it's quite discombobulating, disempowering. Those are the things that I find the most challenging about it. Yeah.
And also, it's one of the earliest scenarios where you can just get outright killed if you don't get the right outcome at the end. That's quite an early end to the campaign, isn't it?
Yeah. Geez, I've forgotten about that. Yeah.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you could have a fun time studying how the spectral location, particularly the art on the locations is great because it's the same art as the non-spectral version. You get to go, oh, wow, look, this bit's decayed or deteriorated. But you're not really there to look at the pictures, are you? And I think it's an early attempt at an escort mission, isn't it? You're trying to get people out.
Yes.
And just because of the way movement works and because of how cramped that scenario is, it's quite hard to do escort missions. Well, it's quite hard to do escort missions generally in Arkham, but I think particularly on that kind of map, it's very difficult. There's a Feast of Hemlock Vale scenario that is an escort mission, and at least it gives you a couple of different paths. So you feel like you're like, okay, go this way, we can get away from the enemy. Whereas in this, normally the Spectral Watcher is standing in the hallway waiting for you, and you're like, what are we supposed to do here? So it's nice idea, maybe the wrong map for it, I would say.
I think when we played at Kevling, everyone we tried to escort out got devoured, didn't they? Pretty much.
I don't think we did particularly well, but then that's how we play the game anyway. We never do particularly well. We never claim to be good Arkham players, that's for sure.
But you're right, it is very cramped space to be doing it. And the Spectral Watcher is, if you know the Spectral Watcher, then you're prepared for the Spectral Watcher, but if not, it's a bit of a shock. So... the Spectral Watcher would have been in the prologue, though, so I suppose. Yeah. But still.
But in the prologue, you won't have had your own investigator.
No.
Yeah. The last time I played TCU, we did a sort of super team of Gloria and Rita. And we took Rita deliberately for agility-based stuff to deal with witches, because evading witches allows you to get rid of hexes, but also just to sit on the Spectral Watcher, have your agility up at 6 or 7, and you just, every time the Watcher needs evading, you can evade it and you can move away as Rita. Right. And that I think is the strongest way of dealing with the Watcher, not wasting any more actions than you need to, and just getting it to chill. And it makes some scenarios really easy, where if you were trying to chew through the Watcher repeatedly, it would be really challenging.
That's a smart strategy. So someone holds down the Watcher while the other person escorts
do their stuff. Yeah.
There you go. See, easy. Secret name. So secret name. What do we think about secret name?
I mean, just stepping back slightly, it was the end of the previous scenario where you get the opportunity to decide to side with the lodge or not. If you successfully get out with the lodge members, and you can join them or not. So that's the first time
or lie to them.
You're presented with that. Sorry?
Or lie to them.
Lie to them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then obviously the start of the secret name, then you have a sort of like a branching introduction then, depending on whether you're with the lodge, you're against the lodge, you were dead, etc. So I quite like I'm a big fan of watching, going through all the flow charts of working your way, all the different permutations of how you can get through the scenarios. That's
Kevling. I still haven't got my head around. You can get kind of lost in the mist or something, and then come back. Or am I misremembering that you can fail the?
The previous scenario, if you got trapped in the house, you were never seen from again,
and that's it. You die.
You were killed, and then on this, on this next scenario, you obviously then having to your new bunch of investigators reading the newspaper.
That's it. Yes. Yeah. I don't know why I thought maybe it's someone else gets lost in the mist and comes back later, but I'm misremembering now.
Is that the
yeah,
prologue
that's from the
investigators?
prologue. Yeah,
That's the people.
Because there's 4 different outcomes, isn't there, for the
Yes,
individual
that's right.
prologue
Death
investigators?
types.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
and that would be the argument for replaying Disappearance at Twilight Estate, the prologue, because how you die determines whether you're lost in the mist or never heard from again, and that then has a mechanical impact on when they show up again in Union and Disillusion.
Yep.
Do they turn up and empower the Spectral Watcher? Do they turn up as angry geists?
Yes.
Do you just find their notebook and whatever it is? Yeah. So the one downside I would say for using the tarot method for that prologue is you miss kind of caring about, well, if I know I'm going to get defeated next turn, I'm going to make sure I don't get defeated by the Watcher. I'm going to get defeated by Doom instead because it will have a different narrative outcome. That would be a reason to replay.
Have a little bit of agency in how you go out, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. And an agency that has a story impact, which is curious. Yeah. Secret Name for me, I really love the scenario, but it's a really hard scenario. It's very challenging solo. I've had a horrible time playing it solo. It's like, it feels like for this and Wages of Sin, my top tip would be like, don't waste any time, move quickly. And then often when I play it, you get bogged down with stuff. The rats get bigger and bigger. And you're like, oh, I'm hexed out of my mind. I can't do anything. And it becomes really horrible. So, yeah, maybe there's quite a big delta between how I would like to play the scenario and how I usually play the scenario.
What about you, CrabbyTerror8?
Yes, it's difficult. It's challenging. It's long as well. It's quite a slog to get through, and I think unfortunately, because of those things, it obscures the sort of story behind Keziah a bit, because you're kind of so focused on those things that you're less focused on the fact that this is a manifestation of a witch from the past and all this sort of thing. And so I think because unfortunately, this is the one scenario that is anchored to the lore in a very explicit way. But so it's kind of unfortunate that that can get a bit obscured because of its challenge, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it's which part of the lore is it anchored to, and what Maxine decided to anchor it to is the weirdness, the strange geometry, the idea of like past and present telescoping.
Yes.
And that things would get, you certainly at the end of Secret Name, you can go to Court of the Old Ones. You've got all of these weird locations. It's sort of psychedelic.
Yes.
It's like in a film where if things were just all bright colours and going crazy, which is very different from, I mean, that exists in Dreams in the Witch House, but in like a couple of paragraphs, not as a whole scenario for 3 hours of playtime.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, bit of a slog, I think. And the thing is, I like all those. There's a scenario in Forgotten Age as well where you're going to all sort of different places and different locations. It's one of the end scenarios. I can't remember which
Shattered
one.
Eons.
Yeah, that one. And it's fun. It's always fun going to lots of different places. Oh, look, we're now in blah. But yes, it doesn't feel so fun. I think that's the problem. It's not a fun scenario. It's more challenge, I think. Yeah. And then there's Brian Jenkin, of course. Bloody Brian Jenkin.
Well, that would change everything, right? If you weren't enjoying the scenario, now you're loving it. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Wages of Sin. Yeah, people had a lot to say about Wages of Sin. When I did a search on scenarios, this was the one that people said the most about. Maybe would you like to hear what people had to say about Wages of Sin?
Yeah, sure.
Wages of Sin, every time I play this campaign, I seriously consider resigning on turn 1. of Wages of Sin. It is the least enjoyable scenario I've ever had the displeasure of playing in Arkham. That was from Ender Dragon. Existing Win6207 says, I actually like Wages of Sin. I just wish they'd skip the Watcher for that scenario. It's hard enough without the Watcher. Thorpe says, on the other hand, I actually love Wages of Sin because it really tests your competence at building. Since there are so many test types, it's great to see how your team works together. And Always 8 says, the spectre, ha-ha, of Wages of Sin lies heavy over this campaign. There's nothing more to say. It just straight sucks. I'm confident calling it the worst scenario in the game because at least the Devourer below has the excuse of being the first box ever released. Wow, that's a little bit harsh. But you can see that some people really don't like Wages of Sin. Which is a pity.
How should I respond? Politely or come out punching? No, I mean, that's fair. And people are entitled to their opinions.
Sure.
I think, so there's a couple of contextual things I'll throw in. One is that win more scenarios or non-binary win condition scenarios can be more challenging generally. So when, it's very hard to do all 4 Geists in Wages of Sin.
Yeah.
But getting 2 is great. So do you need to adjust your expectations as a player of what's reasonable? And really, you only need 1 in terms of not getting then punished as the story goes on.
Yeah.
So can you get 1? In solo, my goal is 1.
Yeah.
If I get 1, great.
Happy. Yeah.
So that's one thing. And you only learn that by playing it enough to realise that matters. If you only play it to get 4, fine. Second is, it is important to honour the challenge that comes in the 4th scenario of 8 scenario campaigns. Let's run through them. Essex County Express. Party ender for some people because they didn't know to go quick enough.
Yeah.
Unspeakable Oath in Carcosa in the asylum. Killed people. Couldn't believe that their campaign was over after 4.
Oh, yes.
Boundary Beyond. Boundary Beyond is designed to make your life miserable. And I would say is a much less enjoyable experience than Wages of Sin. And then you've got Wages of Sin. So there's something about that second Mythos pack in the campaign that for whatever reason Maxine really enjoyed being like, maybe we should up the difficulty now, or maybe we should punch the players in the stomach and see how they feel about it. And I'm talking obviously from the vantage point of having played a lot. I welcome it. It's fine. This is part of the experience of Arkham. Yeah. I think on a more serious point, I would say Wages of Sin is an incredibly difficult scenario.
Yeah.
And it's easier for it to be disappointing than it is for it to feel fulfilling. And generally speaking, like throughout, I guess the theme of Flavour Text is, can there be a tension between how you play and do you get to enjoy the story as well? And Wages of Sin is like, yeah, oh, by the way, all of these guys hate you and they are desperately trying to kill you all the time. And even if you're trying to like put them at rest, they're going to hurt you all the time until you do that. So have a great day. It's just a miserable experience. And again, feature not bug is where I go to with it, which, yeah.
Yeah, and
the more I talk about this, the more I think there's something wrong with me. Yeah.
No, it's refreshing to hear that because I mean, again, my frustration was because it's not fun. It's thematically a really deep scenario, but again, the scenario gets in the way of that because the stories on the back of the Geist are really heart-wrenching.
So you said because it's not fun. Yeah. What's not fun about it?
The challenge, as you were saying, the challenge.
It's too hard.
It's very hard and it's relentlessly challenging. And as people say, not on top of that, the Watcher turns up, right? So I'd agree with
the Watcher. We could do without. Yeah. I would agree. Part of what I think is hard about it is the map is very condensed. And even though the map is small, you can deal with a Geist, and then the place you need to take it would be 3 moves away, and there's only one route to get there. So if there's anything between you and them, you're really stuck. The Geists themselves, they're quite complicated to deal with, and then you need to take them somewhere and do another thing. So they are like very time consuming. And in theory, you would like flip 1, carry it around with you until you're ready to head to the place you need to get rid of it, but they all punish you for doing that. It's a very hard scenario.
Yeah. In a way, kind of another what's it, mission? Kind of an escort mission kind of thing again, right?
Yeah.
So
just with the guys kicking and screaming as you're trying to.
that's right. So and I don't. I think the thing is, you talk about those other scenarios, and I'm right, like unspeakable oath in the asylum, right? Things like that. Is that what it is? Unspeakable oath.
Yeah, that's
in
right.
the asylum. I don't know. I love that. Even though I could die in that one, I always loved that one because I think it's because it's an asylum, and you kind of, there's so much to explore, and it's really, it's a horrible place, but it's just I love it in that sense. So I think I don't know where I was going with that. I think the fact that this is more of an escort mission type idea, just it doesn't quite work the same. Oh, that's what I was going to make. The other point is, by the scenario 4, you've had some upgrades to your investigator, but TCU isn't exactly generous with XP, is it?
Yeah. You can get a fair bit in Secret Name, but you need to have been really on top of all of the rats and Brown Jenkin and be able to explore all of the different places to get all of the XP. And it might be that you've just gone, we need to just finish this scenario and foregone.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember it as a particularly generous.
No.
And then the next scenario is generous because you can get all the keys, but it's sort of a step too late.
Yes, exactly. And to be fair, the earlier campaigns weren't so generous with XP like later campaigns. Later campaigns are much better at kind of giving you, because Forgotten Age was pretty terrible at giving you lots of XP as well, right? But so
Forgotten Age is one of the most generous campaigns, but you need to be prepared to go explore in the jungle for the ruins. The ruins have 2 VP each.
Okay.
But you need to be able to get them.
Yes.
And most people's first experience in the jungle is not that they have spare actions to go and get Temple of the Fang and get the clues off it for an extra 2 VP. Then most people's experience is like, oh my god, snakes, broods, get me out of here. And similarly, Boundary of Beyond gives you an XP for each location you fix in time, whatever it's called. But most people get 1 or 2 in that scenario, so they don't get the 6 and go, great, 6 XP.
No. Yes. Now, my favourite here, Scenario 5, The Greater Good. I love this campaign. This is so good. Just, I feel like I'm in Mission Impossible or something. Going through. I mean,
sneaking about,
I really like that about it. And just really, and I like the fact that you can be if you're part of the lodge or you're not part of the lodge, it plays out differently. Because if you're part of the lodge, you just rock in, right? You don't have to kind of break a window and jump in and all that kind of thing. And it's lovely the way there's stuff going on. Arguments are going on and you're not really part of them, but they're like in corridors. People are kind of chatting and kind of arguing with each other and that kind of thing going on. So, I like all that. That's great. It's a breath of fresh air. It really kind of lifts the mood, I think. It's great. Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think it's a great scenario.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, in a way, it has a couple of quirks, the keys, 2 different routes in.
Yeah.
In a way, it's just classic Arkham.
Yeah.
It's just, it's like what you said earlier, Kevling. It's a pretty straightforward map, and it's go around, get the keys. The encounter deck is really evocative of the lodge, and lots of the cards you haven't really seen before, so it's like, oh wow, Mark of the Order, this is this expulsion, they go and grab your keys off you, these different knights that can be chasing you around. It's like it really smashes it in terms of making you feel like you're in the lodge.
It's brilliant. Definitely. It is really great. Like you say, it's more of a straightforward Arkham kind of thing. So And then we get into union and disillusion. So is this where we're turning off and on or is that the next? Is this the brazier one where you've got to turn the braziers off, light them or
and
not
the
light them?
circle tests where you're combining stats.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah. So what do we think about this one?
If I remember right, isn't this the one with quite a convoluted setup, because there's about 4 different versions of the axe depending on the various background that you've been through so far. So it's a little bit complex from that point of view.
And if you've sided with the lodge, the braziers are lit and you need to unlight them. And if you sided with the witches, they're unlit and you need, or whichever way. Yeah,
one way or the other.
Yes.
It's exactly.
I always find I have to double check. Hang on, what am I doing? Am I lighting or am I, unlighting? Yeah.
And is it the visited isle or the unvisited isle? I can never remember which one.
Unvisited.
You kept calling it uninvited.
Uninvited isle. That's right.
Yeah.
I called it the uninvited.
For an unvisited isle, there's a lot of people on it. Yeah.
That's right. And this is some island in the middle of Arkham, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah,
it's like the river, isn't
It's
it?
like, it's just on the river there, but it's like no one's ever noticed it before or cares about it. Suddenly it's like super important and there's light streaming from the sky. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always
Yeah,
eight.
and depending on what you're doing, you're trying to either trap the geist or not.
Yeah. This is where you have the little puzzle boxy thing, isn't it? Is this?
Yeah, you've rescued that from greater good.
That's
and you
right.
use
Then you use the puzzle boxy
deal
thing and all that. Yeah. Always 8 says union dissolution is the worst of this, where regardless of which side you took, the culmination of that plot line involves either lighting or unlighting braziers. And they say, why? How do you know how to do that? Why am I using a combination of WP and agility to do that instead of, I don't know, pushing it over? That just so happens to play it exactly the same mechanically. The initial mystery of the missing people resolves itself in the least satisfying way possible. They just show up. Okay. So, all right. I mean, yeah.
My feeling of it is, so the campaign can end at this point. You can win the campaign.
Yep. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
In many ways, this is a conclusion scenario, but it's almost got too much packed in. I think I don't mind the play experience of this scenario, but I'd agree with what Kevlin said. The setup is quite laborious because there's a lot of different paths kind of coming to roost at this point. Again, I think the limitations of the format meant that you have to have all these different versions. You can't just in the current campaign box setup, you could basically just have 2 packs and say just draw pack A for this version or draw pack B. You couldn't do that in Mythos packs. And then circle tests are a really intriguing idea, but I'd agree they don't make much thematic sense. So there's a whole jumble of stuff going on, and this is the point where it cares what's happened in the prologue. So if you don't know what the payoff of that is going to be, you might suddenly get hit by the Gavriella enemy or the Penny enemy because they've become a Geist. Or it might be that you get an ally who gives you a stat boost and you go, oh great, but that can throw you. I'll share a little anecdote from this. One of the last times I played this, it was with another power couple. It was with Luke Robinson, the Dreamer. So obviously he can make a mess of any map. And then I was playing as Mandy, the researcher, and I was running various myriad cards, including 3 aces. And 3 aces is if you commit all 3 copies, you auto-succeed on the test.
Right.
And because I was Mandy, I just kept drawing them into my hand and kept doing that. And they make just absolute mincemeat of circle tests, because the final circle test is add all your stats together and beat a 20. It's like, okay, that's quite hard to do unless you just auto-succeed. And we had a kind of very fun time really trivializing this scenario that, I mean, Mandy's anyway, just before she was taboo, very strong investigator. And then Luke, like anytime he drew an enemy, would just disappear into his gate and leave. And it was like, I'm not actually trapped in the woods. I'm somewhere completely elsewhere. Thanks, bye. So
He's
real
so
power
OP.
couple.
He's such an OP character.
It's just anything that cares about a map layout. He's like, not me. Yeah.
And he can snipe from his
Fire things out of the gate.
somewhere else as well, on top of everything else. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I chalk Union and Disillusion isn't as hard as Wages of Sin, but I'd say it's another tough scenario. It's up there, right?
It is. I think the difference for me is I just feel with these last 4 scenarios, they just link to each other so nicely that yes, they're difficult, but I feel like the trajectory is really clear. And I know there's various branching things, but I think I really was surprised how much I enjoyed the back end of this campaign much more than the front end. So I think that makes up for a lot, I think, from my perspective. And then we have Pandemic. Sorry, not Pandemic. In the Clutches of Chaos. Which, it's like Ghostbusters. First of all, the scenario goes all Ghostbusters on us, right? All the ghosts are released into Arkham, and it just feels like, that bit in Ghostbusters when they shut down the machine that's been holding all the ghosts and they all break out across New York. That's how it feels like that happens in the Clutches of Chaos, is there just ghosties everywhere. But I really like this. I think the whole Pandemic thing is really... What did you think, Kevling? I thought this was pretty good.
It's a clever way of putting some new mechanics into the game, and if you don't pay attention to it, it can really snowball, can't it? If as the breaches all start cascading onto each other. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, that's the thing. It's just about managing those breaches and keeping on top of them, so that they don't kind of cascade out of control. Really, yeah.
I feel weird about this. I think this may be in the bottom half for me in terms of whether or not I like this. I like the Pandemic mechanic. Fine. I've enjoyed playing the scenario. It's weird actually. It feels a bit tacked on to suddenly be like, oh, now you're doing this Pandemic Arkham related breach thing.
Yeah.
Which I think it is a necessary stepping stone in terms of the world breaking down for us to then go into outer space and take on Azathoth. We need something to happen.
Yeah.
I find it a bit incongruous that it suddenly breaches opening up all over Arkham. Weirdly as well, I think Arkham 3rd edition came out at a similar time as TCU, and that plays with gates opening and enemies coming out of them, doesn't it?
Yes.
More explicitly.
Yeah.
So this has a real sort of mechanical echo of that. And I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but for me maybe it's I don't mind scenarios having a specific thing, but if the thing is so obvious, that pulls me personally out of the story. That I would prefer, so we can probably compare this with, say, For the Greater Good. You do just have to walk around at the lodge and grab keys. So there is a very obvious gimmick, which is that the tokens are keys, but they have a sort of narrative meaning. And maybe there's something in Clutch of Chaos, it's just a resource token on the location. How does that represent the thing or not? Maybe it's a failure of imagination on my part. I would say that it's also a scenario where if you know what you're doing, if you've played any Pandemic, it's not a very hard scenario. You can really keep it under control, right? It's a bit harder in solo because you end up sprinting across the map.
I can imagine.
But in multiplayer, you can sort of, as long as everyone is dialed in, there are fewer hexes and things bogging you down, and you can say, right, where are the risk locations? Who can handle them? And there's a bit of a hack to it, which is if you just keep it locked down and accumulate all the clues you need, you can basically be ready to immediately kill the enemy when they come out because they lose health based on clues. So again, if you know that, you just basically no threat. Oh, the scenario's over. But be that as it may.
Yeah, and it's a really good point, because it's almost like whenever I see in the Clutches of Chaos, I think, yes, it's that Pandemic scenario, not what the story's about. I'm thinking about it.
You made the joke of it. Yeah.
So it's almost like it's drawing attention to the mechanic, and that becomes the feature and the star of the show, in a sense, rather than the story or anything like that. So it's a good point.
And compare it to, say, Essex County Express,
Yeah.
which is also a very gimmick scenario. You're on a line of locations which are a train and they're falling apart. There is a narrative reason to be on the train because you're going to Dunwich.
Yes.
It's not just, how do we put in a train scenario?
Yes.
And I guess there is a narrative reason that, like you said, the Geists have been released and Arkham is like, we need to go now and make a bargain with Azathoth to stop that. But for me, it's a bit woollier.
Yeah. No, you're so right about Arkham Express. And then the other one in Innsmouth, where you're driving along the road in the car and everything. And again, that's mechanically quite different, but very thematically it makes sense. You're driving as fast as you can along the road. And
you're trying to get to the lighthouse, and you're wiggly roads, which is why you find the wrong way.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't go, oh, yes, that's the wiggly road car scenario, and talk about the mechanic. I think about you're driving, you're being chased. It's a chase scenario, that kind of thing. So yeah, you're right. This one does get kind of overtaken by the mechanic itself. Yeah, true. Yeah. And then we get to the final episode, the final scenario, which these are always, I think, a challenge when you get to the final scenario and you've got the big bad and you're out of time and space. I think it's very. You talk about sort of challenging the imagination. These little bits of cardboard have to represent ideas beyond space and time and all these sorts of things. And I always think it's quite difficult to do it. But I think this one actually does a pretty good job of what I think are quite challenging scenarios. These let's face the big bad kind of scenarios. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I love it. I think it's a really good scenario. Maxine has a sort of an extra challenge here that this is the 4th time she's doing a finale.
Yes.
She's already done Lost in Time and Space.
Yes.
At the end of Dunwich. So she can't do the locations are hidden in the encounter deck. So how do you do it instead? How do you show the scale of space that you're covering? And she opted to use cards from your deck as the blank spaces that then fill in, and you can then move around and you kind of get lost. And what's interesting is at this point in the game, this idea of like grid layouts is really uncommon. This is maybe the first time. I can't think of another obvious time that there's a sort of a grid layout and you just move orthogonally. And now that is the kind of the go-to of how the map works. Put stuff down in a grid, normally move around it. So it was innovative in that way as well, that it was you kind of, how do we represent the scale of space? Well, we're going to put these random sparse locations out and then you move between them.
Yes.
I also, for me, the goal here is like survival as well. It's not how do I gear up for this massive fight. It's how do I just get from one place to the next. Often you can end up being chased by various different things. When you advance the act, you add all the monsters in play back into the deck, so then they come back at you. It's a pretty threatening experience. So I think it's a really cool finale. And fitting for one where the most we can hope for is a kind of a meaningful sacrifice.
And I think that for me was really important because I hadn't experienced this final scenario the first time around, so I was worried it was let's get our shotguns out and flamethrowers and whatever's and kill this Azathoth. And I thought, oh no, please don't be like that. And it's not like that at all, which I was really pleased about. So you really do, it does evoke that feeling of you moving, like you say, through space, huge amounts of space, trying to kind of find your way almost like swimming through space to find your way. I think it does a really good job of evoking that within the confines of the game, which, you know, pieces of, you know, cardboard on the table. So I think it does a really good job. What do you think, Kevling?
Yeah, the one thing I can't, well, not that I don't like about it, but it's always one investigator, isn't it, whose cards get used to map out the cosmos. Yeah. So whoever was the active investigator at that time, they've suddenly lost a quarter of their deck. Okay, it could be their weaknesses that they've lost, so it could be a good thing, but they've now been limited of the tools they've got to actually be able to tackle the scenario that their decks help build. So I think that's the only thing I think it's a negative, how one person can be more impacted than everyone else at the table based on how the timing of who it was who actually reached the location first, or I can't remember whoever triggers the next act, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Not
if
sure
you
why
move
they
a
chose
location
to
and
use
need to put
player
an empty
cards.
space. Yeah.
Not quite sure why they used player cards. They could have just used an encounter set that wasn't in use. I'm not sure why.
That's what they've done in Drowned City. They ask you to collect encounter cards in Drowned City, not to go in the encounter deck.
I've not
they
played
use them
that yet. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in one scenario, and makes sense. I think is it a way of making the scenario more difficult without just saying randomly use cards. Like, in theory, you can get those cards back. They do come back when you move from act to act. They shuffle back into the deck, and then you make a new one. It's a difficult one for me because I think it's a feature rather than a bug. I think Maxine is a skillful enough designer that she would have thought, do I do the encounter card back or the player card back? And I've chosen player card back because it has the stars on and it will hit you more.
Yes.
But I also think it's elicited so much frustration from people. I know that there are people who've just made their own empty space deck that they then use, you know, so I think I'm in the minority if I think that that's just kind of par for the course, or that's just something we need to handle. Yeah, and I'd agree that it's an annoying thing. And particularly if you've not got much XP through the campaign, if you've not felt that you've been doing very well, and then you've got one or two key cards that you've put a lot of XP into, that can be really horrid feeling of I'm really looking or if I've got a deck that plays off a particular couple of things, and you're like, I just can't find them. Are they not even in my deck right now?
Not my Key of Ease. No.
Not my Key of Ease, exactly. My Key of Ease, Red Glove Man. Both are not there. Yeah.
I did read somewhere someone said their house rule where you have to share, so all the players share their cards rather than one person kind of thing. You know, like you said, there's a bit of house ruling that goes on for this one. So the feedback from people was very positive about this final campaign. So even people who were less positive about other parts of it, existing Win 6207 says, for me, the final scenario is up there with Lost in Time and Space. In return to, you can even fly around space on a night gaunt. Sign me up. And Afraid Screen 7914 said that the finale of this campaign is also really awesome. It's really hard and totally unfair and could just crush you if you have some bad luck because you're trying to stop Azathoth. I wouldn't have it any other way. I think a lot of finales should be more like this, honestly. So, yeah, there we go. So basically saying, yes, you should be crushed. You should.
Maybe it's more explicit, isn't it? The doom is accumulating on Azathoth. If you hit 10 doom on Azathoth, it takes you straight to a resolution. Maybe in previous scenarios where there aren't the same stakes, it's like, oh, what I'm doing doesn't really matter. But when you're facing like the obliteration of the universe, maybe the stakes are higher. Maybe it matters to stop that doom ending up on Azathoth. Perhaps, yeah. I can see that.
I don't know if either of you played The Evil Within, survival horror video game, but at the end you face some big bad, bit like an Azathoth, and you're falling through space. And a truck with a machine gun is falling with you, and you happen to grab onto the truck, climb onto the back, and then you just shoot it until it dies. And it's the most unsatisfying ending ever because it's just so silly. Because you're facing something that is beyond time and space, literally, doesn't care. And that is what gets more Lovecraftian than that. It's just literally, So, I think it's really good. Right. Who wants to kick off with their final thoughts about TCU?
Shall I go? I don't know. I don't really know what I'm going to say.
Go on, Kevling.
Yeah, I think like we've sort of said a few times, it's the start of increasing complexity, which some people like, some people don't like. Personally, I find I prefer a simpler Arkham experience, but we talked about the cognitive load earlier, didn't we? So I think this is the start of that introduction of having so many things to keep track of. It can actually affect your ability to play well sometimes, or conscious of missing things, etc. We talked about how we felt it was a bit narratively disjointed at the beginning, but the second half played much better. But the Return to really fixed a lot of those issues. So I think overall, it's a really good campaign. We've got a few niggles, a few things we didn't like about it, but like you say, like we said, Return to fixes a lot of the issues that we had, and I'd probably recommend playing the Return to over the original version, purely for those sort of narrative fixes, I think, particularly on the witch side of the story.
Yep.
One of my favourite things to do playing Return Tos is the optional variant where for any encounter set you can shuffle the Return to cards and the original cards together, and then deal the right amount of those cards into the deck without looking at them, so you don't know are you getting Return to or not. What I would say for Circle Undone is obviously that can completely neuter some of the Circle Undone cards, particularly ones that want to see 3, that if you shuffle a set together, so you have to be a bit more selective about how you do that optional variant. I basically don't do that for TCU for that reason, because it turns off, like if you've got rid of 2 Fate of All Fools, the first Fate of All Fools,
and the third one's never going to turn up yet.
But yeah, I'd agree. I think the Return to is great. I think there's a heavy emphasis on willpower in the original campaign, and the Return to balances that with a few more agility-based treacheries as well, just to really test your defensive stats. So my final verdict on Circle Undone, I think it's I definitely think it's flawed, and I certainly can understand the responses that many people have had. I think it's also, I nearly said this at the start, it's a vibe, isn't it? It's bleak, it's frustrating, it's disempowering, sometimes it's disorienting, and you get to a finale which is like, oh yeah, that was intentional. Azathoth doesn't care. I think it nails that. I think it's very personal to Maxine as well, that it's also exploring ideas of depression, of worthlessness, of the point of being alive or not. And that's kind of bold to put that in what's ostensibly like an adventure card game. And I can see why people don't want that in their game. And we know that Maxine, throughout her time as lead designer, consistently wanted to put things in Arkham that other people were thrown by. Why are we going to the jungle? This is meant to be a game set in Arkham. Why are we going to Paris? And similarly, why are we dealing with fate and depression and darkness and gloom in a game? Like, well, why not? It links back to what you said right at the start, CrabbyTerror, about the game system being this narrative delivery thing that can provide experiences far beyond shoot Cthulhu in the face with a shotgun. And that's something I love about it. So, yeah, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I also think it's probably important that it exists as part of the Arkham experience. And that would be my final thought.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think it is, and I really admire the shift in tone, the mood, those survival horror elements, and it was after coming off the first three, so having that sort of difference in those things, the vibe, as we say, really means that it isn't just a vanilla campaign that seems like every other campaign. The Circle Undone is definitely different in that way. On that theme of Azathoth, I think the strength of Path to Carcosa is that from the very start, the theme of the Yellow King, the idea of art warping reality, is very strong. And perhaps if there'd been more of Azathoth, and I think someone actually put this on the forum, if the themes of Azathoth had perhaps been a little bit more present. And then the other thing is, I think there's a lot of moving parts with the witches and the lodge as well. And so it's very hard to keep all of those plates spinning in this campaign. So it's very ambitious. And I think the Return to is definitely, helps from that perspective. So for me, this is a flawed gem. I think I would be my sort of 2-word way of summarising it. And I do love survival horror. And I think I really, not severely, but I very much disliked Circle Undone before we did the podcast. Now I very much feel a bit different about it. I don't love it like I love Carcosa, but I admire it and I respect what it's doing. And Frank, you've been incredibly helpful in drawing those insights out on this show. So thank you very much for that as well, because that's been brilliant. So,
you'll have to let us know if your new players get to Circle Undone.
Yep.
It would be so interesting for you as the observer almost to see what their even if they just play the prologue, see what that's like. Do they all throw the cards away and say, this is horrible, I hate it? I'd be fascinated to hear what that's like for them.
Yes, so true. It's a rare privilege to play with people who are new to the game. So there we are. So look, a big thanks to all the community contributors who posted on Reddit in particular, forum, but also on Facebook. That was really helpful. So I want to shout out a big thank you to them, and a huge thank you to Frank for being on this episode. Frank, where can people, if people don't know, and I'm sure they nearly all do, but if there's that one person who doesn't know, where can they find you?
If people want to hear more of my voice, I have a podcast as well. It's called Drawn to the Flame, which is an Arkham card, and it is about Arkham cards. So you can search on any podcast app for Drawn to the Flame. And if you want to get in touch with me personally, I'm on Discord as Zooey Glass, and then I'm also on Blue Sky now as FB. That's EPHBEE. I'm pretty sure there's no underscore in there. That's my initials, but spelt in letters, FB. So yeah, I mean, by all means, send me a message on there, or listen to the cast if you haven't heard it yet. You might find something you like. I think we're on episode 340 something. So if you really like my voice and you have lots you want to hear, there's plenty to keep you going. Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know about... Yeah, absolutely. Kevling and I have been fangirling about the fact that you would be on this, this episode.
That's very kind of you. But thank you so much for inviting me on. And it was really, it's a really fun thing to do. And I feel really honoured. And it's really nice to revisit a campaign, that I haven't played as much Arkham recently. So to go back and really think closely about a really well-loved campaign for me has been wonderful. So thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Awesome. And Kevling, what are we going to be doing in the next season? No surprise, but what will the next season be?
We're moving on to the Dream Eaters, aren't we?
Yes, off to the Dream Eaters, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that'll be...
We've been slowly working through each campaign in turn, haven't we?
What a year.
It's taken us a few years so far.
Are you going to do like Peter and I did on Drawn to the Flame and have one of you do the waking side and one of you do the dreaming side? Talk about dislocation there.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, never speak to each other. Yeah.
That's right.
Just a very, very occasional interactions between a couple of the scenarios.
That would be a very interesting way to do it. Yeah, well, I don't know. We've got to think about how we'll probably do one of each as we go through. I think that's the way to go, isn't it, Kevling? That can do that. So,
I think so, yeah.
yes. So, yeah, Kevling and I will be back soon to work our way through the Dream Eaters. But until then, I'm CrabbyTerror8.
I'm Kevling.
And we will see you soon. Bye.
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 So once more, thank you for listening. We're on all the major podcast platforms, so please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. If you have any feedback for us, you can email us on ftextpodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram and Threads at ftextpodcast. So on behalf of CrabbyTerror8 and myself, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.